People always said there was something off about Kenneth, but no one could really put a finger on it. He was polite, punctual, and never caused trouble in the quiet apartment block on the edge of Eastbridge. Yet, something lingered in the air whenever he passed, an invisible heaviness that trailed behind him like a scent no one wanted to acknowledge. Neighbours avoided eye contact and children would stop giggling when he walked by. For 6 years, he lived alone in apartment 3B, working from home as a translator, barely seen outside except for his weekly grocery run. The hallway to his flat was always dimmer than the rest, no matter how many times the bulbs were replaced. On a wet November evening, the building manager, Samuel, noticed a faint odour leaking from under Kenneth's door. He knocked. No answer. Another knock. Still nothing. The smell was faint but sharp, like something rotting, mixed with mildew and wet paper. Samuel used the master key and slowly opened the door. The apartment was cold, windowless, and darker than it should have been, considering the hallway light was still on behind him. Everything looked untouched, clean even, but in the corner of the living room, against a bookshelf, stood an old writing desk with a single drawer slightly ajar. It hummed, not audibly, but Samuel felt the vibration in his chest. It made him step back, heart racing, unsure why. Police arrived later that night. No body, no blood, just a note left on the floor beside the desk. It read, "Don't open it, not even when it calls." But there was nothing inside the drawer, just scratch marks on the wood and the faint smell of rust. Kenneth was declared missing and the case quietly shelved. But something began to change in the building. Tenants complained of heavy footsteps in the hallway at odd hours, always stopping in front of 3B. Some reported muffled sobbing, like someone crying with a blanket over their head. Others heard whispers through their walls, speaking in a voice that sounded half like Kenneth, half like something else. 6 weeks after Kenneth vanished, the tenant directly above his unit, a retired schoolteacher named Margaret, jumped from her window in the middle of the night. She left no note. Her daughter swore Margaret had been hearing voices through the vent, saying things like, "You understand now, don't you? It never ends." Management sealed 3B, but late at night, the buzzing still came through the floorboards. A year later, Ethan moved in, young, newly divorced, and needing a cheap place to start over. The building had a vacancy, and 3B was priced absurdly low. He was told nothing except that the previous tenant moved abroad. The apartment was dusty but intact. Ethan cleaned for days, painted the walls, tried to chase the smell away. Still, the drawer wouldn't budge. He never touched it again. 3 weeks into his stay, Ethan began having trouble sleeping. He felt like something was in the room with him, behind the curtain, under the bed, sometimes inside his own reflection. On the 4th week, he found notes in his own handwriting on his desk, none of which he remembered writing. One said, "You brought it back, you idiot." Another simply said, "She's in the drawer now." He didn't know anyone who fit. She. But that night, the sobbing returned, louder now, and from within the apartment itself. On a particularly suffocating night, Ethan invited his childhood friend, Claire, to stay over. She worked as a psychologist and always said Ethan had an overactive imagination, but even she fell silent when she entered the room. "It's cold," she whispered, "but it's not from the air. It's from below." That night, Claire couldn't sleep. Her dreams were full of a woman's face, distorted, grey, with vacant eyes and a constantly whispering mouth. When she awoke, Ethan was sitting on the floor in front of the drawer, whispering back. Claire pulled him away and slapped him hard. He blinked, unaware of how long he'd been there. "I just wanted to see what she wanted," he said, shivering. They left the apartment that morning, but Ethan refused to stay elsewhere. "It needs me now," he said. "If I leave, it finds someone else." Claire returned 2 weeks later, unable to shake the dream or the growing guilt. She brought recording equipment. Ethan barely looked like himself, unshaven, hollow-cheeked, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in days. "I'm okay," he said in a tone that sounded robotic. That night, she set the camera facing the drawer and left it recording while they both stayed awake in the living room. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the drawer slid open on its own. From it came a sound that no mic could later pick up. Only the low, tremoring distortion of a voice, too low to decipher. Ethan rose, eyes closed, and walked toward it. Claire screamed his name. He stopped, blinked, and collapsed. When he woke up, he said, "She tried to show me her sadness. It's endless." The next night, Claire stayed alone. She had to know. The weight of it infected her too. She stared at the drawer all night. At 3:17, it opened again, and this time she looked inside. There was no bottom, only an abyss that breathed. She felt something watching, but more than that, feeling through her. It mirrored every moment of her life she ever tried to bury, every shame, every secret, every failure. The drawer whispered her father's disappointed voice, her ex's cruel laughter, and her own silent screams she never allowed anyone to hear. When she pulled away, the room had changed. It felt lower. The walls seemed to lean inward. She left without taking anything with her. Ethan was gone the next day. His phone disconnected. No trace. Only the drawer remained, now sealed again, waiting. Apartment 3B was removed from the listings. No one spoke of it, yet people still moved in. They didn't stay long. Always the same stories. Dreams of endless stairs. Mirrors that didn't reflect correctly. Whispers calling from vents. Depression has many names, but in this building, it wore a face pressed against glass, a face in the reflection of a dark TV screen, a face that wept until you couldn't tell if it was yours anymore. Samuel, now old and half blind, still lives in the building. He passes by 3B every morning, muttering prayers. The drawer hums still, some nights, when the wind stops and the city goes silent. A voice leaks into the hallway. "I'm still here, and now, so are you." A year later, a group of urban explorers broke into the sealed apartment. They had cameras, lights, and bravado. Their videos later appeared online, but the footage cut to static at 3:17 a.m. One frame captured something. A pale figure hunched beside the drawer, its face featureless, its hand outstretched as if inviting the lens to come closer. Two of the explorers were found wandering the streets weeks later, barefoot, eyes wide with terror. One kept repeating, "I saw myself but wrong," over and over again. The others were never found. Claire, now a recluse, lives far from the city. She doesn't speak to anyone, but some nights, she still dreams of the drawer. In the dream, Ethan sits across from her at a table, his eyes blank, and says, "It wasn't the drawer, Claire. It was always you." Then the floor crumbles beneath her. Her therapist records these dreams obsessively. One night, he dreams of the same drawer. The infection spreads in whispers and forgotten voices. Depression, when left unspoken, becomes more than a feeling. It becomes a place, A door. Apartment 3B no longer exists on maps. The hallway leading to it is sealed behind plaster, but the air is still heavy there. Tenants on the floor above say their floors grow colder. Some claim to hear knocking below their beds. One night, a woman was found in the laundry room, curled in a ball, whispering, "I opened it. She's still crying." In the deepest part of the night, between breaths, you might hear it too, a low sobbing that doesn't belong to anyone alive. And maybe, just maybe, if you get too close to the silence, it hears you back. When Alison Frey, a social worker for adult mental health, received a call from the building superintendent of the Alder Ridge Apartments, she didn't expect anything more than a standard welfare check. The man was worried about one of the tenants, Jonathan Miles, 42, unemployed, single, and reportedly battling depression for years. He hadn't been seen in over 10 days. No sounds came from his unit, no complaints, just a silence that made the air feel heavier. Alison arrived at apartment 302 with the super in tow. The hallway smelled faintly of mildew and stale air. As the key turned, a strange coldness slipped through the opening door. The apartment inside was dark, all windows shut tight, curtains drawn. But more unsettling was the door to the bedroom. It was chained shut from the inside. "John?" she called out. No answer. They had to force the bedroom door open with a crowbar. When it finally gave way, they found the bedroom completely sealed. Windows covered in duct tape, vents blocked with towels, mirrors flipped to face the walls. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, just an unbearable sense of dread. In the center of the room was a mattress. On it lay Jonathan, or what was left of him. His body was unnaturally thin, the skin pale and stretched tight over bone. His eyes were open but lifeless. On the wall behind him, written in uneven black letters, was a single sentence: "It lives in the dark." Back at her office, Alison requested his psychological files. Jonathan had been referred 3 times over the past year, but had refused medication. He reported seeing a thing in his apartment, a moving shadow that mirrored his movements, but only in complete darkness. His notes spoke of insomnia, paranoia, and something he called the companion. One note stuck with her. "It only comes when the lights are off, but it never leaves when the lights come back on." She couldn't sleep that night. She left every light in her apartment on, but still, at 3:14 a.m., she felt the unmistakable sensation of someone standing by her bed. She turned. No one, but the closet door was now open. Alison returned to Jonathan's apartment 2 days later, alone. She needed to see what he saw. Everything in the room had been cleaned by authorities, but the air was still wrong, still stale and cold. She brought a high-lumen flashlight and a thermal camera. When she turned off the lights, the camera picked up something, a faint humanoid shape standing perfectly still in the far corner. No movement, no temperature, just a void. When she turned on the flashlight, it vanished, just gone. She shook visibly. "This is impossible," she muttered, but it wasn't. She kept digging, contacted another former patient who had lived in the same building 6 years earlier. The man now lived in a psychiatric facility. When she mentioned Jonathan, the man's demeanor changed immediately. "Did it find another one?" he whispered. "It feeds on stillness," he explained. "That's why you isolate. That's why you turn the lights off. You stop existing so it can take over. It's not depression. It's infestation. Alison's hands trembled as she left. Every explanation she had ever believed was now a fragile wall crumbling. She set up cameras in her own home. Every night she turned off the lights and sat in silence. At first, nothing, but on the fifth night, a shape appeared, just behind her, only visible on thermal. Her breathing became shallow. The shape grew more defined over time. Shoulders, head, legs. It began mimicking her posture. Then came the voice. It didn't speak in words. It whispered in mood, in dread. She felt despair not her own, sadness that didn't belong to her. She began to cry without reason. Her mirrors fogged from inside. She began seeing herself smile when she wasn't. She stopped going to work. She boarded up her windows, ate very little, kept her phone off. Her friends thought she was grieving Jonathan's case. But inside, she was waging a war against something ancient, something patient, something that didn't need to move to grow stronger. She started finding notes she didn't remember writing. Don't blink while it watches. It can only leave if you invite someone else in. It's learning your name. She tried sleeping with the lights on, but the bulb burst one night, then another, until darkness was no longer an accident. It was mandatory. On the 10th night, she heard her own voice calling her from the living room. She was in bed, alone, but the voice was hers. Calm, familiar, inviting. She turned over and screamed. At the foot of her bed stood a shape, tall, emaciated, head tilted, eyes reflecting no light, and it smiled. It leaned close and whispered, "You've been a lovely host." Then it stepped back into the shadows and vanished. Her phone buzzed the next morning, a welfare check. A woman named Danielle had stopped responding. She lived in Alder Ridge, Unit 304, just 2 doors down from Jonathan. Alison went. She had to, but she didn't knock. She waited, in the hallway, lights flickering. Then the door opened on its own. Inside was darkness, a familiar bedroom, and Danielle standing still, facing a wall. Alison stepped inside. "Danielle?" Danielle turned. Her smile was too wide, too slow. "I'm fine now," she said. "He moved out last night." Alison stared. There, in the mirror behind her, stood her own reflection, but it blinked 3 seconds late. Alison never left Alder Ridge again. Her apartment was found a month later, sealed shut. Windows blacked out, all mirrors removed. The only thing left behind was a note pinned to the door. Depression doesn't want to be treated. It wants to live. It wants your body, your habits, your voice. You don't just fight it, you trade places. It began with the sound of dripping, not from a faucet, not from rain. It was sharper, irregular, like something deeper than water leaking through the cracks of a broken mind. Daniel Weaver, a 46-year-old accountant living alone in a crumbling duplex on the edge of Baltimore, couldn't say exactly when he first noticed it. Maybe it had always been there, just faint enough to blend into the hollow silence of his apartment. He sat up in bed one night, eyes open, staring into the dark as that slow, uneven dripping filled his ears. He pressed his hands against his temples. He hadn't slept properly in weeks, not since Emily's photo fell and shattered on the hardwood floor. splintering the smiling face of his late wife into 1,000 jagged pieces. He still hadn't picked it up. The glass sat scattered beneath the table where it fell, as if the fragments might somehow reassemble themselves if left undisturbed. It was after that moment the dreams began. The suffocating, vivid dreams of her face, hovering above him in bed, eyes open, lips stitched shut. During the day, Daniel moved like a ghost through his routine. He microwaved the same meal, sat at the same cracked kitchen table, opened his laptop, stared at spreadsheets, and barely blinked. No one called anymore, no one visited. His colleagues had stopped asking after his health months ago. He told himself that was a relief. He didn't need the pity, the fake concern. He told himself that. But the silence chewed at him, a living, gnawing thing. One morning, he awoke on the floor beside his bed, his pillow somehow propped on the dresser, as if someone had tried to make him comfortable there. He blinked hard. His hands trembled. He checked every lock, every window. Nothing broken, nothing stolen. But when he returned to the bedroom, the picture frame of Emily was gone. Just gone. And in its place, on the dresser, sat a small folded note, in her handwriting, "Come downstairs." He didn't have a basement, but Daniel followed the words like gospel. He shuffled barefoot down the hallway and opened the door that had always led to a supply closet. Only now it creaked open into darkness. Stairs descended further than they should have, and the air that greeted him smelled of mold, copper, and something else. Something sour, like rotting grief. He turned on the hallway light, but it didn't reach beyond the 3rd step. Still he went down. With each step, his pulse slowed unnaturally. The temperature dropped. He could hear his own breath, thick and ragged, echoing down a tunnel that should not exist. The walls were damp. The dripping sound was louder here, but it wasn't just water. It was rhythmic, almost intentional, a heartbeat, a pulse beneath the foundation of his home. At the bottom of the staircase, Daniel found a narrow corridor lined with mirrors. Each one reflected not his current image, but fragments of his life. Memories, regrets, moments he'd buried. One mirror showed Emily weeping on the kitchen floor after another failed pregnancy test. Another captured the cold, expressionless face he wore at her funeral. He tried to look away, but the mirrors followed him. His breath caught when he passed a mirror that didn't reflect him at all. Instead, it showed an empty room, a padded one, with soft white walls and a single flickering bulb overhead. And in the center of the room sat a figure hunched in a chair, back to the mirror, twitching ever so slightly. The reflection smiled. He ran. Panic stripped logic from his mind. He didn't remember climbing the stairs, but he found himself back in his living room, gasping, clutching the armrest of the couch like a lifeline. The door to the closet was closed again. No stairs, no darkness, just cleaning supplies stacked inside. He slammed it shut and dragged the heaviest chair he had in front of it. That night, the dreams worsened. Emily appeared again, closer this time, her stitched lips oozing blood, her hand reaching for his throat. He screamed himself awake, only to find his fingernails caked in dirt. Beneath them, scratches he didn't remember making, on the wooden floors, on the inside of his bedroom door. Desperate, Daniel tried seeking help. He called Dr. Monroe, a psychiatrist he hadn't spoken to in over a year. The woman on the line paused and then said, "Sir, Dr. Monroe passed away in 2022. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He checked his call log. No number, no outgoing call. only a recorded message in a voice not his own whispering, "They don't help you down here." He hurled the phone across the room. The screen shattered like Emily's photo had. When he bent to pick it up, a fresh note lay under it. "You can't escape what's already inside." He stopped leaving the house altogether. The mirrors began appearing in places they didn't belong, behind cupboard doors, inside the microwave, even replacing the TV screen. Always showing that same padded room. Sometimes, the figure turned its head slightly, as if hearing him, and one night, it stood up. From that moment on, Daniel heard footsteps in the walls, scraping sounds in the vents, and the dripping. It never stopped. It pulsed with his thoughts. Every time he felt despair, it grew louder. Every time he reached for hope, it echoed mockingly. Daniel tried to end it. He took the razor from the medicine cabinet, sat on the edge of the tub, surrounded by the fog of his own exhaled cries. But as he pressed the blade to his wrist, he noticed something in the mirror. The padded room again. But now he was in it. His real-time reflection, sitting, bleeding, sobbing, and behind him stood Emily, her mouth no longer sewn, but wide open, releasing a scream that he couldn't hear, but felt. It shook the walls. He dropped the blade. He vomited. The bathroom lights flickered and then went out. Daniel woke up in his bed, fully clothed, no cuts, no blood, sunlight leaking through the blinds as if none of it had happened. Except there, on the floor beside his bed, was Emily's photograph. Fixed, no cracks, no frame, just her, smiling again. On the back, in that same handwriting, was scrawled, "Try again." He screamed, a deep, primal scream that sounded nothing like his own voice. The photo burned in his hand until he dropped it, and even then, no fire was visible, just pain, as if the despair itself had become alive and fed on every flicker of sanity left inside him. Now, Daniel lives in the basement, or something that looks like him does. The duplex stands empty to outsiders. Neighbors say he moved years ago, but on quiet nights, if one walks by the house slowly, you can hear dripping, rhythmic, like a broken heartbeat. Some say they've seen a light flicker in the closet window, though there shouldn't be a window there. And if you stand too close, you might hear a voice, a whisper, not pleading, not crying, just laughing, low, cracked, and endless.